Democrats focusing on Trump's morality or lack thereof morality over his policies is probably the biggest blunder in the last 100 years in any political realm. Look, Trump started running in 2015, and I think this was an issue for Republicans running against him in the primary, but more solely Democrats over 3 different election cycles. And everything is always about Trump's morality, Trump's lack of morality, things he did, things he said, things he might have done, etc., etc. And by no means am I defending him on this. Obviously, I think there's a lot of issues, and I think he probably, if you look at presidents, he's probably up there for the least moral. If you're looking for a role model, I don't think Trump is that. Now, with all that being said, Trump's morality in terms of the job of the president is to improve people's lives. And you might say that there's some crossover. You might say that someone who's an immoral person, who's cheated on their wives, who said all these bad things can't be a good president. I disagree. Look, I think the key things in terms of being the president is to improve the safety of the average American. I think it's to improve the wages of the average American. I think it's to decrease inflation. I think it's to help the average American. And look, if you're a little rough around the edges, even if you're a bad person, if you're a criminal, at the end of the day, to me, it doesn't really matter. And I think to most Americans, what they want to see is tangible results. And the fact that they weren't pressing him on his lack of knowledge of every single key political issue. I mean, any of you, even if you're the biggest Trump fan, could Trump expand on his healthcare plan? Is there even a healthcare? I mean, he's been in politics for 10 years. One of the most pressing issues in American politics is healthcare. And could he sit down with anybody for an hour and discuss his healthcare plan? I mean, seriously. Could he discuss it for an hour? I think bare minimum, the president or anyone running for any important political office should be able to discuss the 20 biggest issues for an hour. They should be able to give their plan, the counterpoints, etc., ways it could go wrong, what they could do, their end goal, what it would look like in 10 years. The 20 biggest topics: immigration, abortion, everything. You should be able to talk for at least an hour. That's bare minimum. Trump cannot speak about healthcare. He's got no plan. He can't speak about lowering costs. He has no plan for that. He can't speak about raising wages. Absolutely no plan. Everything from wars in the Middle East to inflation to wages to even immigration. There's just slogans. From 2016 to 2020 to 2024, it was build the wall, which didn't really happen. There isn't a wall. There wouldn't have not been an immigration crisis in 2020 if there was actually a wall. And look, I just find it ridiculous that the Democrats didn't take advantage of his lack of substance on every single key issue. He has never, I've never seen a clip of him expanding on a political issue. Build the wall, slogan. Mass deportation, slogan. End inflation, slogan. Lock her up, slogan. I mean, in all honesty, and this might sound crazy, but I don't think he's a particularly political person. I don't think he really cares about the issues. And you can like him, that's fine. You can think he's a cool person. You can think he's a good leader. But he's not an expert in politics. And I mean policy specifically. In terms of running a campaign, obviously he's done a good job. He's won twice and almost would have won the second time instead of winning the first and the third. But regardless, look, I think number one, from just a personal standpoint, I think policies, I think what they do for the country matters more than their morality. And I think the fact that they focused on arguing about, did he say this, was this mean, etc., etc., I think you should have pressed him on his lack of knowledge, the lack of depth that he goes into. I mean, legitimately, instead of arguing back and forth on if he said something mean about XYZ person, what's your healthcare plan? And don't interrupt him. Let him talk for 15 minutes. I would love to hear his plan on that. And now it's too late, obviously. There's not going to be any more elections. But instead of getting in a back and forth arguing about him saying people are eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio, and taking jabs at him, and then he jabs back. Look, that's a battle that in terms of just pure charisma, he's probably going to be more charismatic, more funny, more personable than the average politician. So if you're going to get into that battle of just high school level insults, he's probably going to win that battle. And he has won it 2 out of 3 times. So I think the strategy for both Republicans in the primary in 2016 as well as Democrats in 3 election cycles is to press him on specific policies, which he doesn't have any. I mean, it's a slam dunk. Legitimately, if you're in a debate with him and you don't get into the back and forth fight, like if it was Bernie in 2016, I think Bernie would have beaten Trump. I think Bernie would have said, here are my plans. Bernie's not big into the personal attacks, and Trump would have I don't know what Trump would have done. Maybe he would have actually had to learn specifics about what countries in the Middle East have Muslims and what. I mean, Trump knows nothing. It is impressive that you could become president for 10 years. Well, for right now it's only 5 years, but you could be in politics for 10 years as a presidential candidate and have no policy knowledge.